Thank you for all joining. This will be a Bach Food Equipment presentation. My name is Zach Olson. I'm the lead sales and marketing specialist with Bach Food Equipment. Today's presentation is going to be on the overall benefits of investing in automated technology, whether that be an individual piece of equipment that's automated, a portion or a segment of an overall process, or the entire process itself as a whole being automated. We're going to look at various kind of client examples of automation and really addressing the perceptions that people have about automating, specifically in the food and beverage industry. But first, we're going to take a look at kind of where the industry is now. Why has it trailed other sectors? Food and beverage has really been in a laggard in terms of implementing new technologies, not only automated technologies, but various technologies over the past few decades. Automation is just another one of those. We start with some of the issues we're currently seeing today in the market as a whole. Inflation, supply chain, labor shortages, all of these kind of have a common rope that's threaded through them, which is that automation can be the solution to all of these. As the world exited the COVID pandemic, I'm sure you're all aware, job openings have become extremely difficult to fill, which obviously impacts productivity negatively for your company, resulting in supply chain issues. So it's kind of like a domino effect. Most jobs within the industry, why are they harder to fill? Because of the repetitive nature, some safety concerns at various positions. All of these can really be addressed head on with automated solutions. And then really the four main pillars that we're going to break down here throughout the presentation on why it's been lagging within this industry is one, it's really been the norm for decades to be a very manual process. It's become a very sticky sort of notion that a lot of these processes and steps within a product's creation have to be manual. That's just not true, and we'll address that. The second is that automation will displace workers. Yes, obviously, automation allows for workers to go elsewhere, but usually you can actually put them in better spots within your company where they're more comfortable, they're more efficient, and you can actually put them in a spot where they can use their skills they've acquired more so than just doing a repetitive task over and over again, and things of that nature. This notion that automation drives up food prices, automation reduces COGS, usually has a positive impact on the bottom line. And the food prices actually can tend to go down once a company implements automated solutions, as you'll see in one of our examples to come. And then lastly, the fear, obviously, and this is maybe the most important one, is that the product itself will change. That's also just not true on the whole. Automation results in more consistent product, usually a higher quality, and the flavor is not changed in any sort of way. And like I said, we'll address all four of these as we move throughout the presentation. Bach Food Equipment has really been at the forefront of automated technologies over the past couple years, and we continue to be at the forefront. We do see automation being a positive trend in the industry, and in the next 1, 2, 3 years, if your company's not automating, we do believe you'll be on the back foot. So moving forward here, you can see the perceptions on the left that I just mentioned. On the right are the realities that I kind of started to walk through. The headaches that it relieves, or the staffing headaches, excuse me, that are relieved by automation. The relocation of resources, not only labor, but also utilities and things of that nature. The food prices are cut down because, as I mentioned, it reduces COGS. And then lastly, the consistency and quality is just unmatched in most of these systems. A human just can't do the precision, the accuracy, and the productivity that an automated system can do for extended period of time. Why is now the time to automate? Well, there's really a few reasons. First, a lot of older workers are leaving the workforce. In the food and beverage industry, the workers tend to be older than your average kind of entry-level job. And so these workers are looking to obviously retire or get out of the industry as they want to go to less manual positions. Next, the regulatory environment from the FDA and the USDA is becoming more strict and stringent, and Bach does view this as continuing trend in the next couple of years. Automation and these advanced control systems, SCADA systems, whatever it may be, allow for extreme control over the entire production line, and you can really get detailed feedback on various sections of the process. The labor gap continues to be a challenge, as I mentioned already. The technology is more user-friendly and more accessible than ever. Automated technology that every company is giving out these days, but Box specifically, we ensure the motors, the drives, the software, everything is up to date as much as it can be, and obviously that results in very user-friendly softwares and screens and such. And then lastly, just some work is better off being automated. Who wants to sit in a freezing cold environment, grinding beef all day, like I said here, in the cold room. Automated technology doesn't get cold, obviously, and it can do the job extremely well. On the right here is just a brief example of one of our automated lines. It's a rendering, obviously, but you can see product is loaded at the top right. It gets conveyor down into the initial grind stage, a little grinder mixer, and then the final grind mix cook station there in the bottom left. Moving into our first kind of pillar that we're going to knock down is the notion that products are treated differently. Automation, you can really dial it into exactly how you want your product treated, and it's going to do the same thing every single time. You eliminate all of the manual steps, and obviously that eliminates risk of human error. What does this do? It eliminates operational inconsistencies. You don't have a variable product, and usually the product increases in quality, as you will see in our example here. So moving on to the customer testimonial, we go to one of our clients in the Midwest. They're a bacon processor. They do roughly 72,000 bellies a week. On the left, before Bach was really involved in their automated process, about 85% of their processed pork bellies were sold as their #1 bacon product. It was a very traditional bacon smoking operation. You had the manual combing hanging on the trees, lots of pushing of the carts and the trees into the smokehouse, out of the smokehouse to the freezer, etc. Obviously, lots of risk of product falling off if you don't hang it properly. You had inconsistencies within the smokehouse as bellies were touching each other on the tree, not proper smoking results, inconsistent, as I mentioned. And then in the smokehouse itself, the technology, there's dead zones, there's the density, the smoke density is very variable, as well as cold zones. Just, you don't get a consistent smoke. You cannot guarantee that every single pork belly is going to be treated the same exact way. Now, on the right side is one of Bach's patent pending solution. It's a full front to back solution for various smoked meats. In this example, we're talking about pork bellies, bacon products specifically. 91% plus of the pork belly that came out of our system or comes out of our system actively is actually used for this client's #1 bacon product. There's just not a solution in the market that can achieve this. Your traditional process cannot achieve this. There's obviously no risk of any human error. There's no inconsistencies. The product is oriented the same exact way, the same exact direction, travels throughout the smokehouse for very specific amounts of times, and it results in an extremely consistent product at the end. Unmatched shape, color, flavor, etc. Just a quick explanation of this system. The system begins with an injector, injects the pork bellies, flips them. It goes through a liquid smoke drench into the first spiral, which you can see there in the bottom right-hand corner. That's our drying spiral. Then it enters the second spiral, which is a smoking spiral. It uses real smoke, 4 smoke generators. You can put various wood chips in there, whatever you'd like. And then lastly, it enters the freezer spiral, which is sort of a double helix design. It goes, enters in the bottom, comes out the bottom for the client. Moving to the next slide here. As I mentioned at the start, the notion that productivity decreases with automation, things of that nature. Automation, you can work with extreme precision and speed for 24/7. There's no break needed for an automated system. In comparison with a more manual process, you need heavy supervision. You obviously need breaks. There's less speed just naturally you can work with as a human compared to a machine that's dialed in to do the job. And then more advanced control systems you get access to, which we'll talk about in a few slides as well. This specific client, we're going to stay in the Midwest. One of our clients who's a ham producer doing about 335,000 pounds a day of hams. Before we were involved and before we automated their process, their target yield was 17%. but they were achieving 15%, and they could not get 17% with any sort of reliability. The product had to be held in a holding pattern cooler for 1 to 2 days, 24 to 48 hours, and then just lots of manual movement from injectors to tumblers, smokehouses, etc. This all resulted in a process time of 25 plus hours, that being the lower end within the range. Once we were involved, what did we do? We leveraged one of our larger injectors, as well as various smaller cooled jacketed tumblers. And we achieved that 17% yield that they just could not figure out how to achieve. We eliminated the need for the holding pattern cooler, and then we also just allowed, we set it up in a way, I should say, that allows for a product to be moved in a much cleaner, safer, quicker method. What did this all culminate in? A reduction in processing time down to 2.5 hours. So obviously that's 10% of the lower end range of their old processing time. What did this allow them to do? This allowed them to open up a lot of the machines, or the technology, or the equipment, I should say, excuse me, for other products. They could enter new product lines because they saved so much time on this one product that they can now enter into new areas without having to invest in new equipment, because we really expanded essentially the volume per day they could do of overall products. What next is probably the most important aspect of automation. It's the one that gets brought up the most. It's the one that gets talked about. It's the one that's most concerning for many processors, and that's what do you do with your employees? Well, automation doesn't necessarily mean you have to fire any employees at all. That's not what it means. What it does is it allows you to remove that headache of having to constantly staff all positions at all times. An automated line, for example, that bacon line, what did we do? We reduced it from 40 to 50 employees to process bacon down to 2. Only 2 employees are needed. That 38 employees, let's say, if you reduced it from 40, can go elsewhere within your plant where they can do jobs that they're better at. That creates more efficiency within your process. That creates more comfort for them as well. And likelihood of increasing employee retention increases dramatically. So this example is one of our clients who's a poultry processor. I believe they're top 3 in the United States, top 5 or 10 in the world. They employ roughly 13,000 employees. Before our solution was introduced, they had numerous employees loading and unloading tumblers, manually mixing brines. It was a safety concern for them, as well as the employees knew that it was a more dangerous job. It was a very segmented process. You had different tumblers ranging in size, capabilities, different brands. Everything was kind of a mishmash of solutions thrown together. This resulted in inconsistent tumbling results, which obviously affects the end product. And you had high employee turnover, and that means wasted time and money on bringing in new employees, getting them up to speed. One of the most valuable things clients can have, or processors can have, is experienced employees, 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the line. That's extreme value you can't get from just hiring, a greener employee, if you will. Our solution was introduced. It's kind of a rendering there in the bottom right. That is the live solution. That is the one that is in use today. What did we do? We reduced their labor gap by 40%, freeing up employees to go elsewhere within their plant. Employee retention increased. I don't have a number for it, but I believe it's in the 20 to 40% range because we removed those dangerous jobs. Which obviously leads to savings because you don't have to have that onboarding process that I just mentioned. And then in the end, you get more experienced employees, which is invaluable for your company. I'll explain the process here real quick. So in the top right, if you go kind of northeast to southwest with me, that's where you load your product. In this case, it was chicken breasts. They are sent to that top conveyor belt. If you notice, there's one conveyor belt on top, one below. There's kind of a flap that is automatically controlled, obviously, and it fills up the first tumbler. Once that first tumbler hits the volume that we have programmed in, that flap will now open, and it will allow the product to move to the second tumbler, and so forth. Once the first tumbler is done, in this case, a defrosting action, once the chicken breasts are defrosted and thawed, that tumbler will tilt down and unload itself onto that bottom conveyor belt, and the product will go on to the next step. This is a kind of a recurring process because, as you can imagine, once that first tumbler is unloaded, that last tumbler is going to be filled up. So now you can start filling that first that first tumbler. And obviously you can change the amount of tumblers you have in this line to, get it dialed into your exact process depending on how long the product has to be in the tumbler for. But as you can see, the product goes in the top conveyor belt, comes out the bottom conveyor belt onto the next process. Zero hands-on outside of just a forklift loading the product at the very start. Next, we're going to talk about some savings you can have outside of labor. Utilities, reduce food waste, all of this increase profit margins. That's the bottom line here, no pun intended. On the left, we're going to kind of show this technological example between an older system, which is your traditional semi-continuous smokehouse, and then our patent pending smokehouse on the right, autonomous. So the reason I didn't go with a traditional batch house smokehouse here is because I thought this one even more illustrates and highlights the savings and the possibilities you can have with our system. So semi-continuous is, I'd say, that is like a midpoint between your traditional batch house and your fully autonomous batch house that we have patented. So you can imagine the savings are actually going to be even more in a traditional system. But for this sake, we'll talk about the semi-continuous batch house. Obviously, the product moves through the system on trees, your traditional trees that you have to hang on and put the combs on and hang them, They move through the system from a smokehouse to a cooler. Very inefficient because you have opening doors, obviously loss of heat. The temperature is extremely difficult to retain at a consistent level temperature. And this system requires natural gas. On the right, you see our autonomous system. There's no risk of product loss because the product is on a belt, oriented whatever way you would like, but it's on a belt throughout the entire system. There's no hanging or combing of pork bellies in the system. There's no risk of product loss in that process because it's eliminated in whole. And then utility savings. We save 70% on water. And you say, how do you save 70%? Well, in a traditional system, you have to you have to mist the bellies. You have to clean all of your tree and combing equipment before you can start the process over again. And you have to spray down the batch houses between batch. In our system, it just runs. This water is not needed. 35% savings on energy. As I mentioned already, the temperature and the reheating process is an extreme pull on utilities. Our system, once it's warmed up, the utility consumption is minimal for retaining that temperature throughout your production cycle. And we also eliminate the need for natural gas. There's no natural gas required for our system. And then lastly, as FDA regulations, USDA regulations continuously get more strict and they become more kind of in an oversight stage, automation will be needed to ensure that you have the up-to-date software such as a SCADA system to allow for less headaches in this process. As we all know, it's a very stressful process. For this example, we're going to go to Illinois, where our headquarters are at in Chicago. This is a prepared foods company that serves all 50 states as well as Mexico and Canada, I believe. Before our system, what did they have? Well, they really lacked detailed monitoring and recording in kind of a centralized state. This really came to the forefront when they attempted to scale. That's when they called us. They had difficulty running any sort of detailed analysis because of the lack of centralized internal processes. Really segmented controls. Problem solving was extremely difficult because you can really never pinpoint the exact source of the issue without going and investigating, searching for it yourself. And then lastly, just when USDA compliance came around, it was more difficult than it should be to ensure compliance. On the right, and I want to apologize, it's an older image of our SCADA system, but I thought it's a good one because it illustrates kind of the capability of it. So you see kind of many lines. Those are different pieces of equipment, different processing lines. You can track all of them on one screen. It's a centralized point for entire lines, entire piece of equipment, as I mentioned. The data is actively being archived as your process is running. What does that mean? When USDA comes along and requests to see data from 6 months ago, it's being held within the software. It's easy to search for. You pull it up and you can produce what they'd like to see. You can quickly and accurately respond to problems because the system alarms you to exactly where in your process something went wrong. And then lastly, it's very adaptable, very customizable to your individual processes. It's not, I would say it's a one size fits all system. but it's very kind of moldable and malleable to exactly what you need from it. And this really gives you just the utmost control, but in doing so, it only requires really minimal human interaction. Maybe one person monitoring it, usually one of the head engineers oversees this software. That's all I have today. Really thank you guys for following along and attending this presentation. I hope you learned something. Automation is really the next step we see. As I mentioned at the beginning, if your company's not automating in the next 1, 2, 3, 5 years, we believe you will be on the back foot, especially with our smoking system, our patent pending smoking system, as well as various others, such as our defrosting lines and mixing grinding lines that I briefly kind of introduced. These systems just, the benefits, the ROI you get and the return on your investment is just unmatched when you really trust automation. And we're happy to really attack these sort of perceptions that are in the industry. That is one reason we gave this presentation. Outside of that, Bock Food Equipment has recently went through a sort of rebranding, if you will. We were previously known as Equipment Processing Solutions, Nowicki USA. Earlier this year, we've introduced our new branding, which is obviously Bock Food Equipment. In doing so, we got new socials, our new website. On the left, if you will, follow our new LinkedIn page if you haven't already. We're growing that presence so we can reach more people, give more presentations like this to more folks, and really get our name out there, but as well as just general market trends. And on the right, you can visit our updated website, which shows some of our expanded capabilities, shows all the equipment we have. All of it can be arranged in an automated manner, as well as just individual pieces of equipment if that's what you need. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you learned something. If you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out to me or anybody else on our team. We're more than happy to help. So thank you for attending. Have a good day.